The great warship hung in space like a dark knife, its hull reflecting no light. Inside, High Commander Kang stood tall, his scaled body tense with pride. The Vorax warship, Final Word, was the biggest in their fleet. From its command deck, Kang could watch as entire worlds bowed to his kind. Today was no different. The blue planet below them had fought bravely, but in the end, the result was the same as always. Victory for the Vorax. Kang's yellow eyes narrowed as he watched the view screen. His clawed hand rested on the arm of his command chair. The metal bore deep scratches from countless victories when his excitement had gotten the better of him. "The Tellurian leaders are ready to sign the surrender papers," said Sub-Commander Ta. His voice was rough, like stones being dragged across metal. His mandibles clicked together in what passed for a smile among their kind. "Bring them up," ordered Kang. "I want to see the fear in their eyes when they give up their freedom." The lift doors opened, and 4 Tellurians entered the command deck. They were slim creatures with smooth blue skin that seemed to glow slightly. Their large eyes blinked nervously as guards pushed them forward. Next to the powerful Vorax warriors, they looked like children. The tallest Tellurian stepped forward on shaking legs. "High Commander, we bring the sign papers as ordered." Kang didn't take the papers. He never touched anything a lesser species had handled. Ta took them instead, checking that everything was in order. "You fought for 3 of your months," said Kang, his voice calm but filled with power. "Longer than most. Yet the end was never in doubt." The Tellurian leader's shoulders dropped. "We had hoped." "Hope is for species too weak to shape their own futures," Kang cut in. "The Vorax do not hope. We take." Ta placed the papers on a scanner, and the ship's computer added them to the growing list of conquered worlds. The Tellurian was now the 6th species to fall in this cycle of conquest. "Another victory for the Imperium," said Ta, his mandibles clicking with satisfaction. "Was there ever any doubt?" Kang replied, watching as the Tellurian representatives stood with heads bowed. "Your world now belongs to the Vorax," Kang continued. "Your people will work for us. Your resources are ours. Your military is disbanded. If you follow our rules, you may keep some of your ways and customs. If you resist, we will not be merciful a second time." The Tellurians nodded. They had seen what happened to worlds that fought back after surrender. Entire cities turned to ash. Millions gone in a day. "Take them away," Kang ordered. "Prepare them for the victory gathering." After the Tellurians left, Kang turned to Ta. "They always look so surprised. Every species believes they will be different, that they alone will defeat us." "It is the nature of lesser beings to have false hope," Tai answered. His claws tapped on his display pad. "The victory gathering is ready. 27 species have sent representatives. And those who did not. 3 systems failed to send delegates. They have been marked for punishment strikes." Kang nodded. This was the way of things. The strong ruled, the weak obeyed, and those who failed to understand this simple truth were removed. The natural order of the galaxy, as it had been since the Vorax first left their homeworld 3,000 years ago. The victory gathering was held in the Great Hall of the Final Word. The room could hold 1,000 beings, and today it was nearly full. Representatives from each conquered world stood in groups, with the newest conquests at the front. The Tellurians looked small and afraid among the mix of different alien species. Behind Kang stood 20 elite Vorax warriors. Each had killed hundreds in battle. Their scales bore the ritual scars of their victories, and their eyes watched the crowd for any sign of trouble. "The Vorax Imperium welcomes you," Kang began, his voice carrying easily through the massive room. "Today we celebrate the addition of the Tellurian systems to our growing family." Family was not the right word, and everyone knew it. The Vorax did not have families as other species understood them. They had hunting packs and breeding groups. But Kang had learned that other species responded better to certain words. One by one, representatives came forward with tribute. The fish like Mura brought rare metals from the depths of their ocean worlds. The rock-skinned growth offered new mining technology. The furry Venda presented art pieces and cultural artifacts. Each gift was accepted with a nod from Kang, though most would be stored away and forgotten. It was not the gifts that mattered, but the act of giving them. When all tributes had been presented, Kang stood again. The room fell completely silent. "The Imperium grows stronger each cycle," he said. "Our borders expand. Our power increases. Today I announce that our next expansion will take us to the spiral arm designated Sector 9. A murmur ran through the crowd. Sector 9 was far from current Vorax territory. Many had thought the mighty predators would consolidate their recent gains before pushing outward again. "Our scout ships leave tomorrow," Kang continued. "Within one cycle, new worlds will join our Imperium, willingly or not." What none of them knew, not Kang, not the gathered representatives, not even the Vorax scouts preparing for their journey, was that Sector 9 contained a small blue planet called Earth, a world that had never met aliens before, a world whose people had survived countless disasters, wars, and near extinctions, a world of beings who, despite their soft skin and lack of natural weapons, had risen to dominate their planet through something the Vorax had never truly understood: adaptability. As the gathering ended and the representatives returned to their ships, Kang looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, humanity was going about its daily life, unaware that the greatest predators the galaxy had ever known were turning their yellow eyes toward Earth. The mining ship Lucky Star drifted slowly through the asteroid field near Jupiter. It was an old vessel, patched in many places, but still reliable. The crew of 15 humans had been out for 3 months, collecting rare minerals from the asteroids. Captain Hai stood on the bridge, looking at the readings from their latest find. "This one has good traces of iridium," she said to her first officer. "Mark it for the collection team." Suddenly, the ship's sensors blared an alarm. 3 unknown vessels had appeared at the edge of their scanning range. They were moving fast, heading straight for the Lucky Star. "What are those?" asked the first officer, his eyes wide. "They don't match any Earth ship designs." Captain Hai studied the screen. The ships were sleek and dark, with shapes that reminded her of hunting animals. "Send out a standard greeting. Ask them to identify themselves." Before they could send the message, the largest of the strange ships opened communications. On the screen appeared a creature that made the whole bridge crew gasp. It had dark scales, yellow eyes, and a face that looked like a mix between a lizard and an insect. When it spoke, its voice was deep and rough. "This is Captain Jin of the Vorax Imperial scout ship Fang of Night. Your vessel is now in territory claimed by the Vorax Imperium. Surrender your vessel or be destroyed." Captain Hai took a deep breath. First contact with aliens, and they were threatening her ship. She straightened her uniform and stepped in front of the camera. "This is Captain Hai of Earth Mining Corporation vessel, Lucky Star. We don't recognize your authority in our system. These are Earth territories, established by international treaty 50 years ago." The alien captain's face showed surprise for a moment, then what might have been amusement. Captain Jin laughed, a harsh sound like metal grinding against stone. "Your ignorance is noted. The Vorax claim all systems we discover. Your species is unknown to us, but that changes nothing. Prepare to be boarded. Resistance will result in your destruction." The communication cut off. Captain Hai turned to her crew. "Battle stations. Yun, get us moving. Yun, power up the defense systems." "Captain," said Yun, her voice shaking, "their ships are at least 3 times our size, with weapons signatures off the charts. We can't fight them." "Who said anything about fighting?" Captain Hai smiled grimly. "The Lucky Star may be old, but she's fast and nimble. Let's show these aliens what humans can do." As the 3 Vorax ships approached in a standard attack formation, the Lucky Star suddenly fired its side thrusters. The mining vessel spun and dived, heading straight into the densest part of the asteroid field. The Vorax ships followed, confident in their superior technology. What they didn't expect was how well the human pilot knew this asteroid field. The lucky star weaved between rocks that seemed too close together for any ship to pass. It used the larger asteroids as shields, ducking behind them when the Vorax fired warning shots. On the Lid Vorax ship, Captain Jin watched with growing frustration. "They're just miners. How are they evading us like this?" He growled at his weapons officer. "Their ship is smaller and more maneuverable than ours," the officer replied. "And the pilot knows this area well." For 20 minutes, the chase continued. The lucky star took a few hits, but nothing serious. Then, just when the Vorax thought they had the human ship cornered against a large asteroid, Captain Hai gave the order. "Jump drive now." In a flash of blue light, the lucky star disappeared, entering faster than light travel from a standing start, a dangerous maneuver that most pilots would never attempt. Captain Jin slammed his clawed hand against his command chair. "Find out where they went. I want that ship." "They've jumped to Earth, Captain," his navigator said. "It would take us 3 days to follow." Jin hissed in frustration. These humans were either very brave or very foolish. Either way, the Vorax Imperium would soon teach them their place. 2 days later on Earth, Admiral Sung stood before the United Earth Council in a grand meeting hall in New Geneva. The room was filled with 50 representatives from all Earth nations. The atmosphere was tense as people discussed the first confirmed alien contact in human history. Admiral Sung played the recording from the Lucky Star. When it finished, the room erupted in voices. "Silence," called the council president. "Admiral Sung, your assessment, please." The admiral stepped forward. He was an older man with gray hair and a calm face that hid his concern. "The aliens call themselves the Vorax. Based on Captain Hai's report and the sensor data, they're technologically advanced, but their ships are built for power, not agility. Their weapons could have destroyed the Lucky Star easily, but they wanted to capture it instead." "Are they a threat to Earth?" asked one representative. "Any species that demands immediate surrender is a threat," Admiral Sung replied. "But I believe we have an opportunity. The fact that the Lucky Star escaped shows they aren't invincible. I recommend we send a diplomatic mission while preparing our defenses." Colonel Mai stood up from her seat at the military section. She was younger than Sung, with a reputation for being direct. "With respect, Admiral, diplomacy may be viewed as weakness by these predators. The Vorax clearly operate on dominance. Their first words were a demand for surrender. We should prepare for war, not send diplomats to be captured or killed." The debate continued for hours. Some representatives wanted to hide, hoping the Vorax would leave if they found Earth too difficult to find. Others wanted to attack first. In the end, diplomacy won by a narrow vote. "We will send a diplomatic vessel," the president decided, "but it will be escorted by 3 of our best warships, hidden just out of sensor range." A week later, Captain Hai found herself on a new mission. Her knowledge of the Vorax made her the logical choice to lead the diplomatic team. Their ship, the Olive Branch, traveled to the edge of the solar system, where the Vorax had established a small outpost on a distant moon. Sub-Commander Han met them in a neutral zone between the ships. He was larger than Captain Jin had seemed on the view screen, standing nearly 8 feet tall with dark green scales and intimidating yellow eyes. 4 armed Vorax guards accompanied him. Captain Hai and her team of 3 diplomats approached slowly. The humans looked tiny next to the alien predators. "You are the one who escaped our scouts," Han said, his voice rumbling. He seemed amused by the coincidence. "I am Captain Hai of Earth," she replied calmly. "I've come to establish diplomatic relations between our peoples." Han made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Diplomatic relations. The Vorax do not have relations with lesser species. You will provide tribute or face conquest. This is the way of the galaxy." The diplomats behind Hai shifted nervously, but she stood firm. "Humans are not familiar with your customs," she said. "On Earth, we believe in mutual respect between species." "Respect is earned through strength," Han replied. "Your kind seems weak, soft. No natural weapons. He flexed his clawed hands. There are many kinds of strength, Hai answered. Han leaned down, bringing his face close to hers. His breath was hot and smelled like metal. You will provide tribute or face conquest, he stated flatly. Those are your only choices. Captain Hai stood tall despite being half his size. She looked directly into his alien eyes without flinching. Humans bow to no one. The red dust of Mars swirled as alarm sirens wailed across the colony. 6 large Vorax warships had appeared in orbit without warning. The colony's 10,000 people rushed to shelters while defense teams ran to their posts. This was the moment they had trained for since the news of first contact 3 weeks ago. Commander Du stood in the Mars Defense Center, watching as the enemy ships moved into attack formation. He was a calm man, even in crisis. 20 years in space had taught him that panic killed faster than any enemy. They're starting their descent, reported his second-in-command. Looks like they're aiming for the main dome. Du nodded, just as we expected. Activate Protocol Dust Devil. Across the Martian surface, hidden launchers powered up. These weren't military weapons. Mars had been a peaceful scientific and mining colony before the Vorax arrived. These were mining charges, drilling explosives, and scientific equipment, all repurposed in the 2 weeks since Earth learned of the alien threat. The first Vorax landing ships entered the atmosphere. They were black arrowheads, designed to look frightening. The message was clear. Resistance was pointless. Wait for it, Commander Du said softly. Let them think we're helpless. The Vorax ships were halfway to the surface when Du gave the order. Now, suddenly, the Martian dust storm intensified, but not naturally. Hidden fans and repurposed atmosphere processors whipped the red dust into a blinding cloud. The Vorax ship's sensors struggled to penetrate the dust. Second phase, ordered Du. Small, unmanned mining ships launched from hidden cave entrances. They were simple vessels, not built for fighting, but they had been modified to broadcast false sensor signatures that made them appear as human fighter craft. In orbit, Commander Jun of the Vorax attack fleet watched with growing frustration as his sensor screens filled with confusing readings. What's happening? He demanded. Where are these fighters coming from? Our scouts reported minimal defenses. They're using our sensor nets against us, shouted his sensor officer. Human ships are disappearing from detection only to reappear dangerously close. Jun growled. This was supposed to be a simple mission, a swift punishment strike against the humans' Mars colony to teach them their place. Now his landing force was blind, and unknown numbers of human ships were moving through the dust storm. Launch fighters to clear the area, he ordered. The Vorax fighters descended into the storm. They were powerful craft, each able to destroy a human mining ship with a single shot, but they couldn't hit what they couldn't see. The dust clogged their intake valves and confused their targeting systems. On the surface, Du watched the confusion with grim satisfaction. Third phase. Deploy the Hornets. Hundreds of small drones, each no bigger than a human hand, launched from the colony. They carried no weapons, just cameras and small motors. But they swarmed around the Vorax fighters, attaching to hulls and engines, further confusing their systems. In orbit, 3 Vorax cruisers moved closer to the planet to provide support. That was when the humans revealed their true surprise. Launch the torpedoes, ordered Du. From hidden silos around the colony, 20 converted mining charges shot upward. They weren't sophisticated weapons, just mining explosives fitted with simple guidance systems, but they were hidden among hundreds of false sensor readings, making them nearly impossible to track. The first torpedo struck a Vorax cruiser's engine section. The explosion wasn't large by military standards, but it was precisely targeted. The cruiser's right engine cluster went dark. 2 more torpedoes hit another cruiser's weapon systems. A third ship took damage to its command deck. For the first time in living memory, Vorax warships had been damaged by a supposedly inferior species. Commander Jun's rage was visible even to his subordinates, who backed away from his command chair. Pull back the landing force. Regroup in high orbit. As the Vorax ships retreated, cheers erupted in the Mars Defense Center. They had survived the first attack, but everyone knew this was just the beginning. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Professor Sue worked in a secure laboratory deep under the Pacific Science Center. In front of her was a collection of Vorax technology, small pieces recovered from scanner probes they had left behind during first contact. Professor Sue was not a military person. Her specialty was xenobiology, the study of alien life forms. But these days, everyone's skills were being redirected toward survival. She connected a neural scanner to a piece of Vorax communication equipment. The readings that came back made her eyes widen. "That's strange," she muttered, adjusting the scanner. She tried different frequencies, watching how the alien technology responded. After 3 hours of testing, she was sure of her discovery. Professor Sue requested an emergency meeting with Earth's Defense Council. 2 hours later, she stood before Admiral Sung and 20 other leaders. "Their neural systems are hypersensitive to certain frequencies," she reported, showing her data on the large screen. "It appears the Vorax evolved in an environment with very specific sound ranges. Frequencies between 18 and 22 kilohertz cause their neural pathways to temporarily scramble." Admiral Sung leaned forward. "You're saying we can stun them with sound?" "Potentially, yes. At minimum, it would cause them severe discomfort and confusion," Professor Sue continued. "And there's more. I've analyzed their communication patterns from the messages we intercepted. Their rigid hierarchy creates predictable command patterns. They always follow specific protocols, even when those protocols don't make tactical sense." Colonel Mee nodded. "That fits with what we saw at Mars. They expected an easy victory and didn't adapt quickly when surprised." "This could be the advantage we need," said Admiral Sung. Far from Earth, aboard the Vorax flagship, Dominant Claw, Captain Hai sat alone in her cell. After the failed diplomatic mission, she had been taken prisoner rather than killed, a rare honor the Vorax sometimes granted to those who showed unusual courage. Her cell was small but not uncomfortable. The Vorax didn't believe in unnecessary cruelty. To them, dominance was natural, not something to be angry about. They even allowed her to walk through certain parts of the ship under guard, studying her as she studied them. Today, she watched from a corner of the command deck as 2 Vorax officers argued about the failed Mars attack. Sub-Commander Han towered over a younger officer named Pak. "Your landing strategy was flawed," Han growled, his scales bristling. "You approached directly, as if they were mindless prey." Pak hissed back, his body language becoming aggressive. "I followed standard conquest protocols. The failure was in your intelligence gathering." Captain Hai noticed how the other officers stepped back, forming a circle around the two. None intervened or offered suggestions. As the argument grew more heated, Han and Pak began a display of physical dominance, not fighting, but showing teeth, extending claws, making themselves appear larger. What interested Hai most was what happened next. After Pak submitted, lowering his head and stepping back, the matter was considered settled. Han's plan would be followed without question, even though Hai could see flaws in it that a combined approach might have solved. "Interesting," she whispered, watching carefully. The Vorax strength was impressive, but their pack mentality created blind spots. When officers disagreed, they posture fought rather than combining their ideas. The winner's plan was followed completely. The losers ignored. This rigid hierarchy might be their weakness. Humans argued too, but their best leaders took ideas from everyone, creating stronger plans. As she was led back to her cell, Captain Hai began formulating a plan. The Vorax were predictable in their dominance patterns. Their guard schedules, their patrol routes, even their attention spans followed patterns they never thought to question. And patterns could be exploited. For 60 days, Earth prepared for war. Cities built deep shelters. Factories worked day and night. People learned new skills. A planet that had known peace for 30 years now readied itself for the greatest fight in human history. In underground labs, Professor Sue and 500 scientists worked on special weapons. They studied the small pieces of Vorax technology and the data from Mars. Their most important creation was the sonic disruptor, a device that produced sounds the human ear could not hear, but that would hurt Vorax brains. Will it work against their ships? Admiral Sung asked during a test. Professor Sue shook her head. Not directly. But it will affect their pilots. Their ships are protected against regular weapons, but not against this frequency. They never needed to protect against it before. All around Earth, regular buildings changed. Schools became factories. Theaters became training centers. Even homes had small workshops where people made parts for the defense. In orbit, Earth's space fleet grew. They had only 50 warships, much fewer than the Vorax. But now thousands of civilian ships joined them. Mining vessels, space taxis, science ships. Each was fitted with whatever weapons could be made in time. Admiral Sung knew they could not win a direct battle. So they planned a different kind of fight, one that used human strengths, creativity, adaptability, and teamwork. The Vorax fleet arrived on a Tuesday morning. 120 warships appeared at the edge of the solar system. They were led by the huge flagship, Dominant Claw, under the command of Fleet Master Ba, one of the highest Vorax military leaders. From his command chair, Ba looked at the human defenses with contempt. Their fleet is small and primitive. This will be over quickly. His strategy was simple and had worked on 20 other worlds. Strike hard at military targets, destroy leadership centers, then accept surrender from the survivors. The Vorax fleet moved forward in perfect formation, their black ships like teeth against the darkness of space. They expected Earth to defend in layers, with the strongest ships protecting the planet. That was what all other species did. That was what made sense to the predator mind. But humans didn't follow the expected pattern. As the Vorax approached, the Earth ships scattered. They broke formation and flew in all directions. Some headed straight at the Vorax. Others hid behind moons or asteroids. Many seemed to run away. "What are they doing?" asked Ba's second in command. "Their strategy makes no sense." Ba growled. "They have no strategy. They panic and flee. Target the largest ships first." But as Vorax weapons locked onto human warships, something strange happened. The targets multiplied on their screens. Where there had been one ship, now there appeared to be 5. "They're using decoys," shouted the sensor officer. "Ships are broadcasting false signals." Ba slammed his fist on his chair. "Ignore the false readings. Find the real ships." But that was harder than it seemed. The humans had created special devices that confused Vorax sensors. Some human ships appeared larger than they were. Others nearly disappeared from scanners. And hundreds of small drones flew among them, each broadcasting signals that looked like warships. "They're everywhere and nowhere," roared Fleet Master Ba, as his targeting systems struggled to lock onto the smaller, faster human vessels. The Vorax fired anyway. Their powerful weapons destroyed some human ships, but hit mostly empty space. Meanwhile, human vessels darted in and out of range, firing quick shots before running again. "This is not battle," hissed Ba. "This is annoying stinging insects." But the worst was yet to come. 3 hours into the battle, Admiral Sung gave the order: deploy sonic weapons. Across the human fleet, special transmitters activated. They sent out waves of sound at exactly 20 kilohertz. Humans could not hear it. But to the Vorax, it was like knives in their brains. On the Vorax ships, pilots suddenly clutched their heads. Gunners missed targets. Communications officers failed to relay orders. Even the mighty Fleet Master Ba fell to his knees, his yellow eyes wide with pain. "What is happening?" he gasped. Entire squadrons of Vorax fighters drifted in space, their pilots unable to control them. Larger ships fired at random, sometimes hitting their own vessels. For the first time in battle, The mighty predators felt fear. Meanwhile, on the flagship Dominant Claw, Captain High saw her chance. For weeks she had watched the guards, learning their patterns. She knew they changed shifts every 6 hours. She knew the second guard always arrived 3 minutes before the first one left. And she knew that during that time, neither was fully alert. When the sonic attack began, the guards outside her cell were affected just like everyone else. They fought to stay on duty despite the pain in their heads. Their attention failed. Captain High had prepared a small tool from her food tray, sharpening it against the floor for days. It wasn't much, but it was enough to open the simple lock of her cell when no one was watching. She slipped out quietly. The Vorax expected prisoners to run or fight. They never expected them to move calmly, as if they belonged. Captain High walked through the corridors, stepping aside when Vorax rushed past. Most were too busy dealing with the battle to notice one small human. She had memorized the ship's layout during her escorted walks. The communication center was 3 levels up. With the crew distracted by the sonic attack, she reached it easily. 2 communication officers lay on the floor, their hands over their ear slits. High stepped over them and went to the main console. The Vorax used security codes for their battle communications. During her time as prisoner, she had watched officers enter these codes many times. The Vorax never thought to hide them from her. Why would a mere human understand their system? But High had understood. She entered the command codes and opened a channel to Earth. "This is Captain High. I'm on the Vorax flagship, sending their command frequencies now." With these codes, Earth could listen to all Vorax communications. They could predict every move. They could send false orders. In the main battle, the Vorax finally managed to adjust their systems to block the sonic attack. Fleet Master Ba stood again, rage in his eyes. "Destroy them all," he ordered. But it was too late. The human fleet had regrouped during the confusion. And now they knew exactly what orders Ba was giving. For 3 more hours, the battle continued. But now every Vorax move was met with a perfect counter. Every formation was broken before it formed. The predators had become the prey. Finally, Ba received a message from his homeworld. "Retreat. Preserve the fleet. This enemy requires reconsideration." For the first time in their long history of conquest, the Vorax were forced to retreat. As the black ships turned and fled, cheers erupted across the human fleet. Earth had won its first battle against the galaxy's apex predators. But everyone knew this was just the beginning. 2 months after the Battle of Earth, the human flagship Unity traveled through space with a small fleet of 20 ships. They had a bold mission that many thought was crazy. They were heading to Vorax Prime, the homeworld of the galaxy's most feared predators. Admiral Sung stood on the bridge of the Unity, looking at the view screen. The Vorax home system had 3 suns and 7 planets. Vorax Prime was the 3rd planet, a large world with red oceans and black continents. Around it orbited hundreds of warships. "They could destroy us in seconds," said Colonel Meh, standing beside him. "They could try," replied Sung. "But first, they'll want to know why we're here." As if on cue, the communication system activated. The face of High Commander Kang appeared on screen. His yellow eyes narrowed when he saw Sung. "You have great courage or great foolishness to come here," Kang said. "Your victory at Earth was unexpected. But here, you faced the full might of the Vorax fleet." Admiral Sung nodded respectfully. "We are aware of your strength, High Commander. That is why we've come to talk, not fight." Kang made a harsh sound, something between a laugh and a growl. "Talk. After you humiliated our forces, after your Captain High stole our command codes." "Yes," said Sung simply, "because what comes next is your choice." Sung pressed a button, and a hologram appeared beside him. It showed Earth's new weapon, a device that could send the painful sonic frequency across entire star systems. It wasn't real. Humans had no such weapon. But the Vorax didn't know that. "High Commander Kang, We could destroy your homeworld with this weapon, but we offer something unprecedented: alliance. Kang's rage was visible even through the screen. His scales stood up, and his claws extended. You dare dictate terms. We dare to suggest evolution. Sung replied calmly. Your species conquered through superior strength. Ours survived through adaptation and cooperation. Together, we could be stronger than either of us alone. Kang was silent for a long moment. Then he said, I will hear your proposal. Come to the neutral meeting station at the edge of our system. Bring no more than 5 representatives. The meeting station was an old trading post built by a species long forgotten. It floated in empty space, far from any planet. Its walls were thick metal, its halls large enough for many different kinds of aliens. Admiral Sung led the human delegation. With him came Captain Hai, Professor Su, and 2 others who had helped plan Earth's defense. They entered the main hall to find High Commander Kang waiting with 4 other Vorax leaders. The 2 groups sat across from each other at a large table. For a while, no one spoke. Then Captain Hai broke the silence. We meet again, High Commander. Last time, you were certain of victory. What changed? Kang's eyes fixed on her. Your species changed everything. For 3,000 years, the Vorax have conquered without serious challenge. Our way worked. Why should we change now? Professor Su placed a data device on the table. It projected images of various alien species, including the blue-skinned Tellurians. Because there's a better way, she said. Each species has unique strengths. The Tellurians can see energy fields invisible to others. The Mira can survive deep ocean pressures. The Groth can process minerals no other species can touch. She showed more images of different species working together on various projects. These are simulations based on our studies, she continued. If all these species worked together instead of under Vorax rule, they could accomplish things none could do alone, including things the Vorax cannot do. Kang leaned forward. The strong rule the weak. This is the way of nature. No, said Captain Hai. That's just one way. On Earth, we learned a different lesson. Early humans were not the strongest animals. We weren't the fastest. We had no claws or armor. But we survived because we adapted. We worked together. We changed our behavior when old ways failed. She stood up, looking directly at Kang. The true apex predator isn't the one who dominates through force, but the one who adapts fastest to change. One of the other Vorax leaders hissed. So we should abandon our strength. Become weak like prey species. Admiral Sung shook his head. Not at all. The Vorax would still be powerful in an alliance, but you would use that power to protect, not conquer. Your strength would earn respect, not fear. And if we refuse? Asked Kang. Sung met his gaze steadily. Then we will defend ourselves. And we will help others defend themselves too. The next battles will be harder than the first. You might win some. We might win others. But in the end, the Vorax Imperium will fall, just as all empires based only on force eventually fall. Silence filled the room. The Vorax leaders looked at each other. This was not a decision they had ever faced before. Finally, Kang stood up. He walked to a window that looked out into space. For several minutes, he just stared at the stars. When I was young, he said quietly, I asked my teacher why we conquered. He said it was because we could, because it was our nature. He turned back to the humans. No one ever suggested there was another way. Kang studied the humans closely. Their bodies were weak, their lifespans short, yet they had accomplished what no species had before. Perhaps there was wisdom in adaptation. The Vorax have never known equals, he finally said. Perhaps it is time we evolved beyond conquest. The negotiations lasted for days. Sometimes they were tense, with Vorax leaders growling and humans raising their voices. But slowly, step by step, they created something new. The beginning of a Galactic Council where all species would have a voice. Word spread quickly across the galaxy. On conquered worlds, People looked up at the stars with new hope. The Tellurians held public celebrations. The Mira sang ancient freedom songs in their ocean cities. Even some young Vorax welcomed the change, tired of endless wars. It would not be easy. Thousands of years of conquest could not be undone in days or even years. Some Vorax refused to accept the new way. Some humans remained suspicious of their former enemies. But as Captain High watched the first meeting of the Galactic Council 6 months later, with representatives from 12 species sitting together, she knew they had changed the course of history. The predators were learning cooperation. The prey species were finding their voice. And humans had become an unexpected bridge between worlds, not through domination, but through the simple, revolutionary idea that diversity created strength. The end.